Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda, DXKT Davao, member, kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
High food and fuel prices. And K-pop group Blackpink is coming to Manila next year. The country witnessed today a state funeral for its 12th president. The remains of Fidel Valdez Ramos were buried at the Libingan ng Mga Bayani in Taguig. The ceremony was complete with full military honors given his long life of service, both in the armed forces and in politics, including his presidency from 1992 to 1998. Ramos died on Sunday, July 31st, at the age of 94. And for the first time in recent memory, a sitting president attending the burial of a former chief executive. President Bongbong Marcos stood by the side of former First Lady Ming Ramos and handed over the interment flag to her. David Santos tells us what this gesture symbolizes.
It was the presidential thing to do. As chief executive, the president is invited but not required to attend the burial of the former president, who is traditionally accorded full military honors. If President Bongbong Marcos was on time, he could have walked with the family in the funeral procession.
May we acknowledge the presence?
But Mr. Marcos, perhaps coming from a busy schedule, arrived just as the graveside honors began. It was almost like things came full circle. 36 years ago, Fidel Valdez Ramos, or FVR, helped oust President Ferdinand Edralin Marcos.
The Philippine flag.
Today, the younger Marcos presented the folded funeral flag to Ramos's widow.
Traditionally, ang nakikita kasi natin is the most senior military officer, the one handing flag dun sa mga naulila. No? But remember that the President is the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Very fitting na ang Pangulo ang magbigay ng bandila kay Ma'am Ming Ramos.
A time-honored ritual as the nation bids its farewell to its 12th president. The ceremony still amid a backdrop of a pandemic, the former First Lady speaking for the family, perhaps overwhelmed with love and support. While in a moment of grief, it was also a time of celebration and of gratitude. While we remember a leader defined by humility, courage, and a life devoted to public service.
Sabi niya, kaya natin ito. Maraming salamat. Kaya ba natin?
FVR's burial serving as a reminder that there are things greater than politics, even for a brief moment. David Santos, CNN Philippines.
Pope Francis joins Filipinos in mourning the late former President Ramos. The Pope extending his condolences in a message addressed to President Bongbong Marcos and shared by the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines. The pontiff underscored Ramos's efforts in, quote, fostering the values of democracy and the rule of law during his years of service. For many, Fidel Ramos was a military man, a president, and a democracy icon. But for those who knew him very well, very closely, he was a good leader with a goofy, sometimes corny sense of humor. George Cahilas has this story.
For Sam Ramos Jones, Fidel V. Ramos was a funny and thoughtful grandfather. He was born in 1992 when his lolo was elected president.
He has a very goofy sense of humor, a little bit corny, and that behind the scenes that was even more present. He wasn't the type to, necessarily say, straight up compliments or like hug you and kiss you and say I love you and all that. But if he saw, for example, if he saw something that he thought you would be interested in reading, he made sure that there was a personalized clipping pack that he would give you about, whatever given subject.
Sam and FVR shared their love for books and their favorite, American Caesar, the biography of General Douglas MacArthur.
Still has a very full library that he would always let me steal from, but like a librarian, he would make me fill out a card and promise to return it.
Retired Colonel Dencio Acop, a longtime aide-de-camp of FVR, saw how he was as a public servant and a family man. He described him as like a superhero, a leader who can deal with anything and everything, even during crisis situations.
He was like Superman. You know, si FVR, he was his prowess was everywhere. His intellect, his leadership abilities, even his physical stamina was staggering. You know, he would perform like 50 laps at the old Army Navy Club in Manila, and I could only do 10% of that as his aide camp. You know, so that was how he was.
Veteran journalist and Pulitzer winner Manny Mugato first covered the former president in 1987, when Ramos was the Armed Forces chief. On Politics as Usual last week, Mugato described him as a strict and snobbish officer. But then, there were also corny jokes to charm reporters. But Mugato says FVR became more charming and friendly to the media when he became president. Mugato also saw FVR's grace under pressure, even during death-defying situations.
Kasi marami na akong near-death incidents, no? Joining FBR sa mga kanyang command visits, no? In one of these incidents, yung aming Fokker plane na nag-overshoot sa runway sa may Northern Samar, Tarman. And si FBR is very cool. Sabi ko, lakas muna kayo. He was the last man to emerge from a burning plane. At pag umayon sa plano, sabi na, okay, let's get back to work.
Jones, Acop, and Mugato all agree that FVR was a workaholic and has the openness and willingness to work with people from every spectrum of society. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
When we return, the country's economic growth slowed down in the second quarter as consumers grapple with higher prices. And former vice presidential candidate Walden Bello has been released on bail after he was arrested for cyber libel. Stay tuned to Newsnight.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
This is Newsnight on CNN Philippines. Rising costs of fuel and food have taken a toll on the economy as consumers tighten their belts. Our senior correspondent Lois Calderon breaks down the GDP numbers for us.
An economy losing momentum. From a growth rate of above 8%, it slowed to just 7.4% in April to June. A disappointing result versus median forecasts of as bullish as 8.6% from a Reuters survey of economists and government's 7.5%. The bumps came from record oil and food prices. As inflation bites, consumers cut spending, crippling an economy that depends on it 70%. Quarter on quarter, personal consumption shrank by 2.5%, with travel, hotels, and restaurants hit the most. Reopened borders and back-to-work orders would have been the fuel to rev up the economy. These jeepney drivers say higher pump prices forced them to instead step on the brakes.
Dumami naman yung tao, kaso tumaas naman yung diesel. Parang wala lang din.
16, 17 hours ang trabaho ko mula umaga Kasi kung maaga ako uwi, wala. Talo.
On the upside, farmers and builders are producing more. Economic managers say the Philippines is not the worst performer in Asia, tailing Vietnam but overtaking Indonesia and China. The inflation headache, after all, is everywhere, and the central bank already moves to tame it. Bangko Sentral Governor Felipe Medalla says the second quarter growth data was within government's forecast range, even if he earlier signaled that supporting the economy is not the BSP's priority.
I'd like to believe that the policy change would have net positive effects on the economy.
Average growth so far tops official goal. But because inflation still casts a dark cloud, economic managers don't expect the economy to accelerate as fast as the first half for the rest of the year.
The growth is likely to, be overall growth for the year is still going to be within the 6.5 to 7.5%. All you need is for the growth in the second semester is a 5.3% growth, which is very highly, achievable. It's very likely that we'll be able to achieve that growth target despite the headwinds.
That's a steady pace to reach their 2022 goal. Lois Calderon, CNN Philippines.
At a time when a Senate committee moves to investigate frequent power outages in the provinces, and for the first time since he was appointed in July, Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla faces the media in a virtual press conference. Lotilla vows to improve the country's self-sufficiency as he returns to take the helm of the department. Paige Javier reports.
Energy Secretary Rafael Lotilla faces daunting tasks: to make power affordable and accessible, and to shift to clean power. But in his first press briefing, he admits the country is highly dependent on imported sources like coal and oil.
The longer-term solution, however, is to move from, again, the President says, from over-dependence on imported sources and to go for more indigenous sources.
With the Malampaya service contract set to end in 2024, he says it would be premature to comment until issues are resolved. But Lotilla says they're looking into other oil and gas exploration investments in undisputed areas and nearby fields. On the moratorium on the construction of new coal-fired plants, here's what he has to say.
I don't believe in completely changing policies and therefore sending mixed signals to investors.
Lotilla says the government will review the previous administration's study on nuclear energy alternatives for the Bataan power plant.
We would have to strengthen the trust and confidence of our people in the ability of government to regulate safely, to put up necessary standards.
The Senate Energy Committee, chaired by Senator Raffy Tulfo, will again investigate the long-standing problem of power outages in the provinces. Tulfo on Monday cited Oriental Mindoro, where brownouts are long but electric bills remain high. Lotilla did not directly comment on the upcoming probe, but he underscores the rich potential of renewable sources in areas like Mindoro. Senate President Mig Zubiri and Senator Grace Poe call for a review of the Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or EPIRA, to lower power rates, especially in the provinces.
We will have to take a closer look at how we should help, we should reorganize, we should strengthen the electric cooperatives. The EPIRA amendments that the Senate President and our legislators are looking at would have to consider elements of this reform.
Lotilla hopes his past experience can help address present-day energy woes. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
Former vice presidential candidate Walden Bello has been released on bail from Camp Caringal in Quezon City a day after he was arrested in his home over cyber libel charges. Former Davao City Chief Information Officer Jeffrey Tupas filed a case against Bello in March for calling her a drug dealer. Bello claims his arrest was connected to Vice President Sara Duterte and his tirades against her during the campaign, calling it, quote, pure political persecution, unquote. He slammed the former Davao City Mayor for, quote, weaponizing the law. Duterte says Bello should stop blaming her for his fall from grace, adding freedom of speech does not give anyone the right to defile the name and reputation of others. News overseas, authorities hold live fire drills in southern Taiwan as tensions with China continue to mount, but defense officials say these are not in response to Beijing's escalation of military exercises near Taipei. They say the drills are regular exercises to boost military readiness. While CNN's Blake Essig reports Chinese military drills around Taiwan have continued past the supposed end date of August 7th.
China's live-fire military exercises were supposed to be finished on Sunday, but earlier today we learned that the People's Liberation Army continues to conduct drills in the air and at sea around Taiwan. It's according to video posted on social media by China's military, saying that Monday's drills are focused on anti-submarine warfare and naval action. Now, in response to the ongoing drills, a spokesperson for Taiwan's Ministry of Defense says China's drills will give Taiwan's military less time to react, that it won't back down and will respond more proactively. Throughout the first 4 days of military exercises by China, Taiwan's defense ministry says that China simulated an attack against the main island of Taiwan involving cyber attacks, a large number of fighter jets and warships operating daily around Taiwan, with many entering Taiwan's air defense identification zone and some crossing the Taiwan Strait median line. Beijing also launched nearly a dozen missiles, some of them flying over Taiwan for the first time ever. But according to military experts, one of the key takeaways from what we saw the past several days is that China demonstrated that a blockade of Taiwan doesn't require a constant naval presence offshore, and that shipping and air traffic can be blocked by the threat of missiles. And while we don't know what the future holds between China and Taiwan, the self-governing island, it's likely that what we're seeing from China's military, the increased tension and aggressive maneuvering, could be the new normal, according to Chinese state media. From now on, China will conduct regular military drills east of the Taiwan Strait median line, which is closer to Taiwan than mainland China. Blake Essig, CNN, Taipei.
In South Korea, at least 8 people were killed after record downpours triggered flooding in Seoul. The floods forced hundreds to evacuate. Homes, roads, and subway stations were flooded. Cars were seen submerged in water. South Korea's Interior and Safety Ministry says 3 of the fatalities were trapped in a flooded semi-basement. 9 others were injured, 6 are still missing. Authorities say the amount of rain recorded since Monday night in parts of Seoul is at 141.5 millimeters of rain per hour, the highest rate since they've began keeping records. And back here at home, the southwest monsoon, or habagat, will bring rains in parts of the country. Forecasters expect scattered rain showers and thunderstorms over the Ilocos region, Abra, Benguet, Zambales, Bataan, Occidental Mindoro, Northern Palawan, and Kalayaan Islands. Metro Manila and the rest of the country will have partly cloudy skies with isolated rain showers or thunderstorms for the rest of the night. Pag-asa is monitoring a tropical storm with international name Mulan outside the Philippine area of responsibility. The Public Works Department pointing to an unfinished drainage system at the Dolomite Beach in the city of Manila as the reason for heavy flooding in the capital. DPWH Secretary Manuel Bonoan told CNN Philippines rehabilitation for the drainage system along parts of Ross Boulevard is facing delays because of additional requirements from the Environment Department. He says work on the drainage may last until the end of September.
Hindi ngayon nagpa-function mabuti yung mga pumps natin yun. So we are upgrading them into bigger pumps. The problem really is actually when the Dolomite Beach was placed there, we need to secure the runoff water, the dirty water, affect the Dolomite Beach. They have required us to put up a sewer pipe about 350 meters. Towards Manila Bay.
Cases of the highly transmissible Omicron subvariant BA.5 in the country surpassed the 4,000 mark as the health department reports 906 new infections with 814 recoveries. There were also 11 additional BA.4 cases and 7 more of BA.2.12.1. All have recovered. On the issue of expired COVID-19 vaccines, the business group Go Negosyo says the private sector already discarded over 4 million doses. In a statement to CNN Philippines, Go Negosyo said they are in talks with the DOH on how to replace them. Health Officer in charge, Maria Rosario Vergeres, says the COVAX facility agreed to replenish all expired shots procured by the government and the private sector. Vaccine manufacturer Janssen Pharmaceuticals applied for a Certificate of Product Registration, or CPR, for its COVID-19 vaccine before the Food and Drug Administration. A CPR makes the product open for commercial use and is a way for Filipinos to get vaccinated once the state of calamity is lifted.
The FDA is currently reviewing and exercising the necessary work para po dito sa application ng Janssen sa kanilang tanggapan.
Vergeres adds emergency use of COVID vaccines and treatments before they reach the final phase will not be allowed if the state of calamity is lifted. This will also affect price caps on medicines and health workers' COVID-19 benefits. Moving on to monkeypox vaccines, the FDA is in talks with 3 manufacturers for the shots, the country also joining other ASEAN members to find ways to secure doses. Senator Cynthia Villar tests positive for COVID-19. She is the 3rd senator to catch the virus in less than a week after colleagues Amy Marcos and Alan Peter Cayetano, all 3 lawmakers, attended Tuesday's session virtually. Senate President Mig Zubiri says Marcos had fever while Cayetano is set to physically return to work next week. Cayetano's infection prompted stricter health protocols in the Senate, with guests now required to show negative COVID-19 test results. In other stories, getting a driver's license is costly and time-consuming, but that could change very soon as the government is on track to impose new rules. George Gilas tells us some officials are concerned those rules may compromise road safety.
Clarissa Paggubasan is applying for a driver's license. Paggubasan underwent 15 hours of theoretical course before she received a student permit, and then 8 hours of practical driving course as a requirement for a non-professional driver's license.
It would be better kung may sarili siyang sasakyan to practice din aside doon sa driving school. Kasi kung mag-rely lang sa driving school, I think maikli.
The Land Transportation Office is suggesting a shorter and cheaper training for those who want to get a driver's license. LTO Chief Chofilo Guadis urges that both theoretical and practical driving courses should only be done in at least 3 hours. As for the fees, Guadis wants standardized costing among driving schools. 80 pesos for online theoretical course and 500 pesos for classroom theoretical and practical driving courses.
Ang hihigpitan po riyan yung examination. I'll see to it that when you get the examination, you are given a really a dressing on the rules on the road. Pag hindi mo na ipasa yan, then you have to repeat the process.
The Philippine Association of LTO accredited driving schools agree that theoretical driving courses must be shortened from 15 to 8 hours by removing repetitive topics in the LTO curriculum. But they suggest that the practical course must be longer to give extra importance to the actual driving training skills and on-site simulation.
Dito pa lang nagsisimula siyang sumakay o mag-aral ng sasakyan, maging familiar sa sasakyan. So, hindi siya bike na sa 3 hours nga mag-aral ka lang ng bike, di ba? So, sa kotse, this is a mechanical. Mako-compromise dito yung road safety, yung kaligtasan ng lahat.
The group adds that coming up with standardized prices for the training is unrealistic, citing varying operational expenses for driving schools, like rent, electricity, equipment, and salary rates of instructors.
We, PALAD, support LTO, okay? But it should be scientifically. No, the approach should be scientific. Hindi pwedeng naisip mo lang on your own opinion, personal recommendations.
The group hopes the LTO will also allow driving schools to offer optional comprehensive driving educational courses. This is to provide in-depth training for those who want to learn further than what is required by the LTO. The LTO meanwhile vows to meet with driving schools to discuss their proposals and come up with a win-win solution to the problem. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Up ahead, tributes pouring in for Hollywood legend Olivia Newton-John, and K-pop group Blackpink announces its comeback to Manila. You're watching CNN Philippines.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
Welcome back. Heading overseas, singer-actress Olivia Newton-John has died. She was 73. Olivia was known for bringing the character of Sandy to life in the film adaptation of Grease. Over the last 30 years, Newton-John was treated for several bouts of cancer, most recently at the base of her spine. Among the many stars who paid tribute was the Danny to Olivia's Sandy, her Grease co-actor John Travolta, posting, quote, "We will see you down the road and we will all be together again. Yours from the first moment I saw you and forever." Fans also paying homage to Olivia with a floral arrangement in her honor on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in the U.S. Shifting gears, you can expect Blackpink in your area again soon with the K-pop group heading to Manila next year. The chart-topping act will perform in the country on March 25, 2023 for its Born Pink World Tour. The venue and ticket prices have yet to be announced. And that is it for now. Join me again on news.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Hontiveros. We leave you with highlights of today's state funeral of former President Fidel Valdez Ramos.
Ito